Here's one for you. So, I have been shaving my head for years and years and years and years and years, decades. And I was never bothered, having a haircut, and I've had them sporadically over the years, and ultimately I end up getting a pain in my face putting in like gel or whatever, wax or whatever different things I've tried over the years, and that's been a bit annoying. And just the whole fixing it before you fucking go anywhere or do anything, and not being able to throw on a hat, and having to go to the barbers and booking in the time, and there's a lot of effort and time that goes into it. It's far, far, far handier to have a razor at home, shave it all off, and be done with it to fuck. And I took the notion recently to fucking let it grow. It's longer now than it's been in years, and it's not exactly fucking weighing me down with the length of it. It's, I don't know, half an inch long, but it's, as I said, as long as it's been in years. And one thing that I've noticed is I'm actually going quite grey. And it's funny because I think more typically people get grey gradually. Now, I've gotten grey gradually, presumably. Like, presumably I didn't wake up one morning and my hair was fucking greyer than it was the day before. It's like an hour hand on the clock. It moves so slowly you can't see it. But it's happening. And I think for most people, they notice it a little, and then 6 months later they might notice it a little bit more, and then 6 months later they might notice it a bit more, and then someday they might meet somebody they haven't seen in a couple of years, and they'll go, "Oh fuck, you've gone quite grey," and then you go, "Oh fuck yeah, I suppose I have." But the point being that it's kind of gradual. Whereas in my own experience, I took the notion to let my hair grow a little bit longer there, 5 or 6 weeks ago. And all of a sudden I'm like, fuck, looking in the mirror going, holy shit, I'm going quite grey. And it doesn't really fucking bother me. It doesn't bother me in the least. But it's just, it's made me reflect on, I suppose, the fact that I'm getting older. I'm 39. Now, I was going to say young at heart. I'm not young at heart, I'm young. I would consider myself objectively to be a young person. And there are people that will say, "Oh, you're 39, age doesn't lie," blah, blah, fucking blah. But there's very few 25-year-olds that could outrun me, outlift me, or out anything me from a purely physical standpoint. I'm fit, I'm healthy, I train regularly, I'm strong, and all the rest of it. So I haven't gone to seed like the overwhelming majority of men my age, unfortunately. Now, I did a bit when ourselves had kids. I effectively had kids. I know I didn't have them, but you tend to not train as much. You're at home with the baby, you're not out and about, you're kind of you have sleepless nights, and that all feeds into eating poorly and all the rest of it. So you tend to put on a few baby pounds when you have kids. I certainly did. I put on the fucking best part of 20 kilos over a couple of years, which I've since lost, thankfully. But most men don't. Most men, they essentially have their kids and then they go to seed. They let themselves go and they put on a gut, and they lose any kind of youth and vitality. And as far as I'm concerned, way ahead of time. Way ahead of time. And it's a mentality as well, more than anything. I was chatting to a friend of mine in the pub there a couple of weeks ago, and he's my age. He's actually maybe a year younger than me. And he commented on the hairstyles of the younger lads in the pub. And it was a bit of a cultural observation, or a generational observation. He was saying, the mullet is a bit back, and see your man over there, Jesus, you get bullied out of existence if you had a haircut like that back in our day. And it was just a general chat around it. But he mentioned something which I thought was mad. He said something along the lines of, I'd love to have a fade, which is, really tight on the side and getting gradually longer and longer and longer and longer to the top of the head. That's a fade. It fades in, like from skin to longer hair. There's no step, say. It's a gradual fading in. And he said, I'd love to get a fade, but I'm too old. And that just instantly fucking made me eye roll. Oh, Jesus Christ, you're too old. You're too old to have a haircut. Like, are you out of your fucking mind? To me, that is just such a poisonous mentality that you would not do something because of a thought, not because of a practicality, not because of an objective truth, but just because of a notion that you've concocted in your own head that you're too old to do something because of insert bullshit here. And this guy, I can only imagine that kind of mentality is pervasive throughout this guy's life. I'd imagine when he's buying clothes to suit, you know, his age, or, you know, he might love, which is fair enough. Like, if you want to dress according to your age, that's fine. But don't not buy something, or don't not wear something, or don't not get the haircut you want, you know, because of a self-imposed bullshit reason, like, you know, you're too old. But that aside, and not even that aside, because I think that's crucially important in what I'm trying to get out of my own head. It's not so much your objective age, but your thoughts about it's not so much about your objective age, it's more your thoughts on your objective age. And I've mentioned this in a previous episode, like your thoughts create your reality. Whether or not you think you can or can't do something, you're right. We live in an objective world, but we are subjective creatures. So how old you think you are, how old you view yourself, is probably more relevant than objectively how many times you've circumnavigated your closest star. And that's a bullshit metric, I think, for calculating your age. Because there's your age according to your date of birth, but then there's your kind of physical age. I mean, if you've got 40% body fat and you've got a resting heart rate of 55, and you're out of breath all the time, and you groan and moan getting out of bed, I don't care if it's only been 21 years since you exited your mother's womb. I mean, you're a 70-year-old. If you're groaning getting up out of the couch, and if you never have any energy and all the rest of it, it doesn't matter if you're only 16. You have an objective age in accordance to when you were born, so how many times you've circumnavigated your closest star, but you have a health age, which is an even more objective measure of how old you are. Because you could have a car that's only 6 months old, but if that car has been fucking going up and down a mountain 24 hours a day and has 100,000 kilometers on it, it's not a fucking new car, it's an old car. So your age is relative, and your thoughts on your age and how old you think you are or view yourself is as important, if not more important, than the time that's elapsed since you were born to the present moment. And our age and how old we feel is tied into our kind of self-assessment of ourselves, who and what we view ourselves as being, because how we view ourselves being affects how we are perceived by other people and how we objectively are. And one thing that I've reflected on is, I think I look a bit older with the grey hair, and I think it makes me look a little bit older. And most people would say that that's not a good thing. You want to look as young as you can. Now, I never shave my head to look young. I just shave my head at pure convenience. But now that I've let it grow a bit, and all of a sudden I've become grey, which is weird. So I kind of went grey in my experience in a matter of weeks, whereas most people would experience it happening over a matter of years, if not decades. So in my own personal experience, I've gone from not being grey at all, ever, to being grey, relatively speaking, instantly. So it gives me, I think, a unique viewpoint on the transition from looking a certain age to looking considerably older. Because I think undeniably going grey or going bald, thankfully I'm not going bald, but going grey and going bald certainly make you look older. And again, looking older is generally deemed as not a good thing. Typically speaking, people will say it's better to look younger. But I don't know if that's entirely the case, because one thing it has me reflecting on is when I kind of caught myself in the mirror there the other day, I was like, fuck! All of a sudden I felt, not felt, but I thought I looked 10 years older than I ever looked. And that instantly kind of gave me a bit of a slump in my mood in that present moment. I was like, oh fuck, like I've gotten old, like, oh. Now it was short-lived, don't get me wrong, because again, I would measure my youthfulness on my resting heart rate and my ability to do A, B and C, which are still as fucking good as any fucking 20-year-old. But I started thinking, is there an upside to looking older? And as I caught myself looking at myself in the mirror, I saw an old, almost like an older version of me. And getting older isn't all bad. So, one of the things that came to mind was, I'm a fucking 40-year-old man. I've always kind of felt, you know, I don't know, 20-something. And I don't mean that in a kind of a childishness way. I've always hated people who say, oh, I might be X age, but I feel 17. Most of those people haven't grown up. That's why they still feel 17. They haven't matured. So mentally, I've always felt way older than I am. But physically, especially now, I feel way younger than I am. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I mean, feeling physically young and mentally, you know, older being, you know, more experienced and maybe wiser, hopefully. Certainly less immature. Like, that's a positive. Feeling less immature or being less immature. Like, immaturity isn't a good thing at any age, because if you're an immature 4-year-old, like, that's a bad thing. As much as it's a bad thing when you're an immature 20-year-old or 16-year-old or 70-year-old. Like, immaturity means essentially that you lack wisdom for your age. You should be kind of more clued in by now. Immaturity, I think, is a pejorative. I can't hear myself referring to somebody else as being immature in a positive way. But when I caught myself, you know, looking a little bit older and kind of going, I'm a fucking 40-year-old man. Simultaneously, there was an element of, I deserve the respect of a 40-year-old man. Because I think 40-year-old men, again, broad sweeping generalization alert, garner more respect and have more authority than younger people. So whenever I'm dealing with, let's say, a customer in my business, like, you know, the customer is king, like, and you'll often hear people say, and there's certainly a truth to it, that having your own business and being your own boss is great, but you do have a boss to a certain degree, if not a large degree, and that boss is your customer. And I find it a lot easier dealing with customers of mine now, or buyers that I'm dealing with who represent my customers, the businesses that are my customers. I find it a lot easier dealing with people that are younger than me. And I think, to a degree at least, it's because of the respect that they show me. So when I was coming up, I was always dealing with people older than me, as we all are. You don't start out in life dealing with people younger than you. So you have a respect for your seniors. You have respect for authority figures, or at least you should. And I always kind of viewed myself as a subordinate to people who are older than me. And there's good and bad muddled up in that. But at the minute, I have to ring one of my customers, one of my biggest customers, and hit them with a price increase. And I've been putting it on the long finger for ages. And it's funny because having viewed myself as being that bit older for the first time in years, I kind of caught myself saying, I'm a fucking 40-year-old man. I have to ring that customer and tell them they're getting a fucking price increase. And there was an element of confidence that came with the grey hair. In a weird fucking messed up kind of a way. And I can't really quite put my finger on it, and that's what this episode is all about, is me kind of exploring it and exercising it and trying to see what comes out of the wash. But it's almost as though I have respect for myself as an older man. And not even an older man, but a more senior man. Because again, age is kind of irrelevant. Seniority is kind of key here, I think. Because if you were to bump into, I don't know, the President of America, who was 10 years younger than you, you'd have all the respect in the world for that guy. He could be fucking 20 years younger than you. You're not going to look down on the President of America because he's younger than you. And that's when you're dealing with somebody else. But when I'm dealing with myself, I think I respected myself more because I looked a bit older. I looked more senior than I felt. The guy in the mirror was more senior than me. And your own self-perception of yourself is so fucking important, because it doesn't matter how much authority you have. You might be king of the fucking world. But if you don't feel like you're king of the world, then nobody's going to treat you as though you're the king of the world. At least not to the same degree that they maybe should. I find it interesting though. And if you enjoyed that, there's a heap more videos there for you to dive in and have a look at. And on that note, I'll chat to you soon.